I was raised as a Yugoslavian, not as a Macedonian, in the first place. And then the war happened in Croatia, and then it kind of went down to Bosnia. Things were not settled as well in Kosovo, and it was filtering through to Macedonia. It was just coming closer and closer.
Interestingly enough, in our buyers agency, we had stopped buying around the end of 2023 purely for the fact that there were so many BAs and so many investors flooding in after the word had got out, essentially. The prices people were paying were ridiculous. G'day everyone, this is Iynka here. Welcome to Investor Journeys, where we chat with everyday Aussies and seasoned investors about their property journeys, the wins, the stuff-ups and everything in between. Whether they've got one property or a whole portfolio, we dive into how they did it, what they've learned, and what their journey's been like so far. No fluff, just real stories from real people. So let's get stuck in. G'day everyone, welcome to the IJ podcast for another episode. We've got a very exciting guest today. It's actually someone who I've met in Melbourne, and we sort of connected with each other through one of the meetup groups there. So shout out to the Inner West Melbourne group for the property group. But yeah, we've just sort of kept in touch, and today she's agreed to come on and share her journey. So thanks, Jasmine, for coming along today.
Thank you, Iynka. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to unpack your journey. And you've got a little bit of an accent there. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and where you've come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So originally, I'm from Macedonia, used to be part of Yugoslavia, so a neighboring country with Greece, Europe. And I was living in Macedonia right until I was 21. So at a very young 21 years of age, I moved to New Zealand. And that was an interesting change because it was obviously different culturally, and moving at such a young age and, leaving the rest of the family back home was difficult. But I learned a lot of things about myself and about life in general in that sort of period of time. So
But sorry to interrupt. I had no idea you moved to New Zealand. I'm a Kiwi. So where did you move?
I went straight to Auckland, so the biggest, the capital city.
Oh, Auckland, yep.
Yeah, and I live the North Shore. So
I was literally living in an Airbnb in 2023 with when my second one was born in Beach Haven. We had an interim before Australia and before we went to India. So our second one, our girl was born there and in the North Shore Hospital, Royal North Shore. And yeah, we were staying near the water, not far from the Chelsea, the cafe, the sugar factory, and yeah, around there. So I know the place well.
yeah, very fond memories. New Zealand was just a fabulous place. And I lived there for 9 years. And then I decided to move to Melbourne, mainly because I was still young at that time. So I was kind of in my 30s, beginning like 30, 31. And I came to Melbourne, which was an interesting transition as well. It was like, in a way, felt like coming back home because of the European influence here. So, the Italians, the Greeks, very similar culturally, which was fantastic. So, and I've been in Melbourne since 2007.
There you go. I was in Auckland and I was actually working there and from 2006 to 2010, and then I moved to Melbourne too. So you've got there before me. So you've been in Australia a little bit longer, but yeah, from the same place.
A very clear memory that I had when I moved here, because I don't know, you probably remember, but in New Zealand, property used to be so much more expensive than Australia. So everything felt like a bargain here. I remember, and I'm regretting to these days that I didn't buy, and we had quite a lot of money with us. So I'm regretting the fact.
No stamp duty, no capital gains, that's an interesting story. So you've come over to Melbourne. You've got to acclimatise to the culture through New Zealand, but obviously Australia is still a little bit of a change. And what were you doing at that time when you moved to Melbourne?
I finished my bachelor degree in New Zealand, and then my first job in New Zealand was as a mortgage underwriter. So this is where my whole experience started as a mortgage underwriter. I was working for ANZ Bank, and in fact, I was assessing all the applications from the brokers. So it was an interesting start in that industry. And then from then I became a branch manager for ANZ Bank. And I started with a smaller branch and then much larger branch. And that was my first experience, because they were encouraging it at the time to run it as a business. And that was my first experience in actually looking at different sort of areas.
Was that residential home loans?
Yes. Yeah. So majority of my clients would have been residential. Yeah. So when I finished with ANZ, I was transferred, or I sought transfer in ANZ business banking. But very shortly after that, I started working for NAB as a manager in their collections department. So very different kind of focus. I went from client-centric and very much frontline banking role to back office and looking at, loans that, or people that struggle with the loans. And actually that was during the financial crisis in America. So this is 2007, 8. In our applications in the collection department with NAB went from, 10 a month to 200 a month. So it was very challenging.
It's the irony that your team grew during the global financial crisis is crazy, isn't it? But I would like to rewind a little bit and understand a bit about more of your backstory. You've obviously come from a fascinating place and quite a troubled place, with the history and everything too. So, as much as you want to talk about it, do you want to tell us a little bit about your upbringing over there and perhaps just share if, with whether it be your parents or your siblings, do you guys ever talk about investments and money? Did that ever come into the topic at all?
Yeah, great sort of, and really fond memories of my life back home because as a child, we grew up in a quite a sort of peaceful country and really actually in a way even prosperous country. I was raised as a Yugoslavian, not as a Macedonian in the first place. And then the war happened in Croatia and then it kind of went down to Bosnia. Things were not settled as well in Kosovo and it was filtering through to Macedonia. It was just coming closer and closer. So as a child, I remember, oh, actually, maybe once I was in my sort of teenage years, I remember that that's when the trouble started. And I saw a lot of things that probably would have been shown on TV these days. A lot of unsettling news from Croatia and Bosnia as the civil war kind of exploded. And I think the focus, particularly for my family prior to the war, was really because Macedonia or Yugoslavia was a socialist country. So the focus one was on everyone is the same, everyone lives in an apartment, and there's no private property per se. The concept of private property just didn't exist because the government was allocating apartments.
Public housing, essentially.
Yes, yeah. So that was probably right up till the late 80s. And then once the war started and things started to change, then everything collapsed in a sense. Everything that was run, so all your factories, everything that actually had value as a business was bought by people who had money. Macedonia became privatized and also became a separate country. I lived through that transition. I saw what was happening, and you kind of suddenly had two classes of people that didn't have much, and then people that had a lot and pretty much ran the country.
And did that affect your living situation?
Look, I didn't impact us. We had a comfortable lifestyle. I remember very fondly. I would have 2 or 3 holidays a year. We would go places because Europe, everything is closed, so you could just go on holidays and you can do things. But I do notice sort of as I was getting into my 15, 16, 17 years of age that things became a little bit tighter. That we couldn't go in as many holidays, and it was a little bit more unsettling in a way. And at that point of time as well, I had a boyfriend, and this is when I was 18, who actually went to America to study at an American university. And I've never been anywhere aside from Europe and the like countries like maybe Italy, Greece. That's where we typically went to travel, but not outside of those parameters. So in the first year of his studies, I went to Washington, D.C. This is where he was studying. And I remember I was just fascinated by the difference between the countries. Everything seemed so much brighter, like even the selection of things that you can buy in the shops, the way people lived, it was an eye opener for me, like real eye opener. And I think that was the instigator. That's what actually kind of got me thinking, oh, maybe there is a different life somewhere else. And that's why I started considering New Zealand and moved essentially when I was 21.
Yeah, right. And how many languages did you speak back there? Like, did you guys speak quite a few? Like, was it English?
Yeah, English, we were taught at school. So my command of English was pretty good. Even I remember when I went to America and visited my boyfriend, he was just, like I could converse with people, but I could easily understand and hold a conversation. So it was something that we were taught in, yeah, primary, secondary school, even at uni, we would study English. So, and like at that time as well, a lot of American movies and a lot of American music. So you were influenced, you would just learn by listening. And that's why whenever I meet new people, they go, "Oh my God, your accent is just funny. I can hear South African, American, New Zealand. Where are you from?" So it was just, yeah, I think that's how I primarily sort of learn English, but as well, yeah.
Yeah, fascinating background. I'm sure like we could spend hours talking about your upbringing and everything like that. But it's interesting to understand where, where you've come from and the issues that were there. But
But I think you asked me as well about the money story. And as like one of the things that it was really interesting, my dad would always give us a weekly allocation of, here you go, that's your own money. So, which was great. And so I've got a sibling, I've got a brother that is 3 years younger than me. And we were giving the same amount of money each week. And I remember, and I think that this is what has served me all my life, is that I would get the money and I would pretty much not spend a cent. So always with an idea, okay, this is what, I want to do. And like if I say for another that many weeks, this is how much I'll have. So it was something that I think it just happened. Maybe someone told me, I just have no recollection. But that habit of really not spending your money and being very conscious of the income and knowing what's coming each week, because I can rely on that, weekly pocket money and things that in a way that taught me, yeah, a lesson of, okay, if you were given a certain amount of money and if you have a goal, you can kind of achieve it, which was actually quite different in contrast to my brother. My brother would just spend it on, everyday things. At the time, I think he gave me foundation of be careful about your spending.
yeah, for sure. I mean, look, the amount of people I speak to that where the siblings are so unaligned, whatever the word is, like they're not aligned at all. And yeah, it's, in terms of their money habits and their money management, it's fascinating because they've come from the same family, right? So, yeah, so that's really cool. And so you're obviously, very careful with your money in terms of money management, everything. You've done the big, where you've come to New Zealand, now you're in Melbourne and you're working in the banks. When does property start to come into the play here?
Okay, so we bought our first property in New Zealand, and this is where we realized when we sold it, we got out with about maybe $400,000 sort of profit from it, and it was like 2 year period of time. So I thought to myself, "Wow, this is fascinating. This is really really good." So then when we moved to Australia, we bought our first property. We bought it in Braybrook, and we bought a townhouse. We wanted a new property at the time. So, that was one of the things that were important to us. So we bought that 2008. And at that time, property prices were just, I think we bought it for about 340 or 360. Can't remember exactly, but that was the first property purchase here. And when we did that, we really didn't have plans to buy anytime sooner. But then I met my husband and I moved with him to his own place. And as we were clearing quite of our mortgage debt pretty quickly, we realized, oh, well, hang on a second, we can actually, use these funds to upgrade, buy a bigger and better property, which we did. So, but the mistake that we made at the time was that, and I think it comes with, being young and actually not even maybe having the resources to get information and to educate themselves. So we sold the property where we lived with my husband. So we were in a 2 bedroom unit in Templestowe. We sold that and we bought our bigger, better home in Eltham. So we've been in Eltham since 2017.
Braybrook is for the listeners that don't know that's sort of not inner west, but it's sort of west, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, they're not too far out. Yeah, not too far out. I know Braybrook quite well. And then yeah, you've sold your place in Templestowe, which is sort of northeast, which is Eltham is a really nice pocket, quite a reputable area too, isn't it?
It's a lovely area. We kind of decided to go to Eltham because we couldn't afford what we wanted. We wanted a bigger land, we wanted the pool, we wanted the bedrooms, and like like our family was expanding, so we wanted that and couldn't afford it in Templestowe, but we could afford in the next door suburbs, so Templestowe and then Eltham. So we just decided let's just go to Eltham, and it was a great decision because if I actually, from a lifestyle perspective, it's been a really fantastic place. But because we sold Templestone, we had quite a lot of funds and our mortgage at Eltham wasn't high, this is where we started to kind of go, okay, what can we do?
Yeah, you've got options. So did you keep the Braybrook property?
Yes.
Okay, so you kept that one, you've sold Templestowe, you've got into your Eltham property. Can I ask roughly how much you paid for that one?
For the Eltham property, we paid 931.
2017. So that Melbourne had already, not already, but it was going through a run at the time.
We actually would have paid in Eltham about $100,000 if we bought the year prior. So we literally just watched how the market was going. And we were in the market trying to buy, but we just kept on missing out. The market was super hot at that period of time. It was just nuts. Yeah.
It was, yeah, because we bought in Murrelbuck in 2020. Oh, I think I'd like to say 2016 or 2015, 2016, but it had moved, but it still ran some more, around that time. So I know that area as well. But no, Eltham, Eltham is like I said, a very reputable area, and it's never gonna really do wrong there. So you've kept that Eltham place, and you've realised you've got some options now. You paid down the mortgage a bit. What was your next thoughts there? You've learned a few things.
So this is the thing. This is probably the time when I started reading all the books as well. You, Margaret Lerner as well, the Property Couch, the podcast, probably all my walks, because Eltham is pretty hilly. You love walking. I would just have my earphones on and just keep on listening. And it was great advice. And that's what not only that it educated me, but it kind of in a way encouraged me to all right, take the leap and just go and do it. And we did, and we feel very sort of lucky that we did it at the time, because when we bought the property in Croydon Hills, it was actually quite a dead period. It was 2000 and end of 2018, 19. But the elections were on. No one knew whether, who will win. And we kind of swooped in, and the property that we bought was on the market for maybe a month already. They had no buyers. So we negotiated hard and we got it for a good price at the time. So we bought it for $750. It's a house with 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms on a full block of almost 800 square meters. It has done really, really well. And we did a recent valuation. It's valued about 1.2.
Wow. So it's gone up, almost 500K.
Yeah. This is the thing. And I've seen a lot of people and a lot of investors, like even if you compare Braybrook, it has risen, but since then making the decision by, okay, where will you find something that, people would love to live in? Pretty much based on the advice that we got from all the podcasts and the books. And we did well. And I think at the time also, the tool, what was the tool? Can't remember whether it was App Data or was it Jeremy?
Junior Shepherd. So can't remember if it was the Suburbs Finder or something. Yeah, I remember.
One of those, and he had like a property kind of clock that if you type in the area, it tells you what's the demand in that area. So we typed in few different suburbs, and Croydon Hills came back as one of the sort of most kind of desired and in demand. So we went, let's just do it. And we were lucky, we could have bought somewhere else. And so, yeah.
You did the research at the end of the day. So,
Yes. Yeah. In a way, it was an educated bias that served us really, really well. And the rent has been going up literally every year. I remember at the beginning, because I was listening to all of the advice, I even staged the property for the property management inspection. So to lease the property, I went through that effort because I wanted the top dollar. But also as a first time investor, in that sense, when I'm, taking money out of my own home and putting it somewhere else, I just wanted to make sure that we get the greatest return. So, that little bit of higher rental return each week really helped us. And now these days it's renting at 800.
That's really impressive. No, very good. So you've got you're obviously going through the ranks here in terms of the properties, and you were living in Eltham, you've kept your Braybrook property, and you bought in Croydon Hills. Was there any more steps after that?
Yeah, and one more last year, we were trying to buy in Perth for almost a year. We had a bit of an unfortunate choice of a buyer's agent. We hired one, they didn't do anything for us, which was really unfortunate. And we kind of went, okay, we are trying and nothing is working out in Perth. Let's just sort of, utilize the knowledge that we had in the interim as well. We paid for a course about reading property data. So we spent quite a lot on that course actually, but it did give us the tools, even that we're buying in Melbourne, to buy in areas that are growing and they are in high demand. And it just proves, we bought that property last year for $690. It's in South Morang. And yeah, it has done, I was actually surprised because I was just doing the valuation just in preparing for the podcast. I couldn't believe it that it's valued at 780. But it was again the same thing, a house, 4 bedrooms, 2 bath.
Yeah, look, I know South Morang, and especially over the last 6 months, it's really started to creep up on the demand side. But I would like to, if you're open to it, touch on the buyer's agent, because I think it's important for our listeners to know the buyer's agents that are doing the right thing and the buyer's agents that aren't. Well, they might have the intention, but they just don't have the experience. What happened in that case with Perth?
I'm not going to name and shame, but yeah, I'll just say that they offered us few properties, but because we've already had experience and knowledge about the type of property that we could see, like they were, for an example, they would give us a property that it's on a main road. And we were clear in our instructions what we want. Or they will give us a property that it was run down and we needed to invest further amount of dollars in order to bring it up to something that it's, presentable and we can generate a little bit more rent. Or they will, for an example, go out of the initial instructions that we agreed on, that instead of the radius of, let's say, 25 kilometers within Perth Central, they would just go another, like, let's say 35, 10 kilometers away. So and we had a clear sort of expectations of what we want, and that's why we were paying the money, and they just couldn't deliver. And I don't know whether the Perth market was too hot. And I know that they were based in Queensland and they couldn't, deliver, but really don't know what were the issues. But after wasted 6 to 8 months, I can't even remember now what exactly it was, we just went, this is not working out. Prior to that, we tried to do it by ourselves and we actually put in few offers, but our offers were not successful. And then with the buyer's agents, and then we gave up on Perth. We kind of thought, too difficult.
Yeah, did you say this was last year?
It would have been the second half of 2023.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, in our buyer's agency, we had stopped buying around the end of 2023 purely for the fact that there were so many BAs and so many investors flooding in after the word had got out, essentially. The prices people were paying were ridiculous, and we weren't seeing the value there. Obviously, we knew it was going to grow some more, which was great for our clients, but to get good value on properties where it was just ridiculous prices, yeah, it was. We actually tapped out around then. So it has obviously done very well since even then, right? It was a tricky market to invest in because everyone was there. But look, obviously being interstate, we are interstate, so we're certainly not in Perth, but you got to be able to obviously follow the brief. I mean, that's huge, and rely on your networks and relationships in whichever place you're investing in. We have upfront conversations with people about their briefs, and sometimes they're realistic, sometimes they aren't. But it's important to have those upfront conversations before we start moving, because if you just take it all and go, yep, we'll deliver, and you don't, that's where things go sour, right? So yeah, you completely appreciate it. It's sort of wasted everyone's time. But anyway, so you bought your fourth property. That seems to be doing well. And look, Melbourne, Victoria, it's tipped to have another good cycle. So, I'm sure you'll just be holding on to these, I assume.
Yeah, definitely. We are planning to hold on to these. At the moment, we are maxed out on our borrowing capacity. So perhaps there might be a conversation next year of, okay, what potentially we could release to buy another two and then use different strategy, buying trusts and have a different way of acquiring properties going forward. Because I'm now in the industry, I obviously meet with a lot of different people. And one of those things that, not rectifying mistakes, but I'm sort of improving our way forward, what is possible. And maybe that will be releasing one of these properties. We just need to sort of find out and work out which one would be best to let go of in order to go and buy another two.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, it's hard to say now, but do you foresee yourself going out of Victoria?
Actually, and this is one of the other motivations why I want to perhaps sell, because we are just, we property wise, we are not really diversified at all our properties in Victoria, and it would potentially be, yeah, definitely looking at different states. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, that'll be exciting to hear what your next steps are. But so in terms of your portfolio value, do you know roughly what that is and what your debt level is now?
Yeah, yeah. So if we say that 1.2 in Croydon Hills, let's say 700 for the Bray Group property and another 800 for South Morang, it's kind of 780 to 800. So I potentially think we are sitting at about 2.6, 2.7 mil.
Yeah. But that's excluding your alpha mine.
Yeah, that's excluding. Yeah.
So 2.7. And debt wise, do you know what your LVR is at the moment?
Yeah, on altogether, it's about 50%. So LVR. So we've got about 1 million.
You've got some pretty decent equity there. to utilize on. Yeah, I appreciate it. It must be a little bit frustrating when the borrowing capacity can't get you to the next step because you've got the equity sitting there, haven't you?
That's the thing. That's why we are thinking, okay, maybe there's a reason now we've got the ability to go again, cash wise or equity wise, but we don't servicing. So we just have to pivot and kind of use a different strategy, which
Yeah. Well, I've got one more question on your portfolio before I do want to hit on what you're doing at the moment. But with your portfolio, do you guys have an exit strategy or a goal in mind? And obviously this is a question without notice, but yeah, do you have any thoughts at the moment? You're just looking to hold grow as much wealth as you can while you guys are working and then look to sell off later.
initially when we started investing, we were thinking with the whole $2,000 kind of, you know, income coming through a week. But then we recalibrated and we actually realized as well there's certain surprises that take place in life. And sometimes you kind of have to adjust things like I started my own business 2 years ago. My husband now is looking to start his own business. My daughter was initially, we were planning to go to a public school. Things happened. Now she's in a private school. So all of these things really have a significant impact on your finances, the way you see things, and the way you kind of have to change and, and pivot and go in a different direction or, choose a different strategy. So at this point of time, we are focused on let's see what we can do to grow our portfolio further and to go in areas because we've been really lucky with the growth and we would like to see growth somewhere else.
Yeah, and you guys have done phenomenally well for investing in Melbourne, where Melbourne in all the headlines are saying that that's the worst state to invest in. You guys have done very well. And so, it's a credit to how you guys started early as well, in my opinion, and you've learned lessons along the way. And it's obvious that the choices that you've made as you moved on with the next steps and the next steps has improved as well. So I think that just comes with the education and the passion you've got. And speaking of passion, you mentioned that you've started your business a few years ago. Do you want to tell us a bit about that as well?
Yeah. So when I left banking, I went to Swinburne Uni and I was teaching. So a lot of my experience was as a teacher, facilitator at Swinburne Uni. And 12 years passed. And then, like when you're working for someone else, you've got a regular income. And for 2 years, I sat on a fence because once we kind of did really well with our investment properties, I could just see that I'm really passionate about this and interests me. Also, it was interesting all I can talk about was, property and finance and what do you do? And I helped a lot of my friends and family to do the right thing so they can kind of move forward with their lives. And for 2 years, I sat on a fence. Should I do it? Should I not? But then I finally mastered the guts to go and say, okay, I'm going to do this. And I opened my own business, my own company, and started as a mortgage broker. So I run my own mortgage brokering. It's called Prosperity Mortgage Partners.
I think it's great that you've obviously had experience in your own personal journey before you started. I think there's a lot of brokers out there, but you bring that to the table. And, how have you found, running a business now and over the last few years? How's that all gone?
It's been phenomenal from a perspective of growth and learning things about, even more about myself and getting to know more people at the moment. When I first started, I had to be mentored because I've been away from the industry to banking. So I essentially had a very poor mentor that I very quickly changed. And I am aligned now with a fantastic group of people that have so much experience in the industry. So all these different aspects of how to market your business, how to grow your business, how to scale your business. It is right now at the fingertips and you can do it quite successfully with social media and networking. So yeah, there are many different areas that I need to focus on in the same time. I'm a mom. I love my daughter. I've got only one child. She's now going to be 13. So years are hitting in. So the focus, yeah, I want to also be a balanced, person in a sense to have enough time to spend with my family. So it's just been a very interesting journey. And yeah, but there are some days that are extremely difficult and I'm super busy, but there's some days because I run my own day and I'll plan my days. I can do things when I want to do them. So it's from that perspective, it's really, really fantastic.
Yeah, look, very, very aligned with everything you've said, with the kids on a much younger, but that
Yeah.
balance and the ability to control your time is so important. And now, you often hear people with businesses saying, I can't go back to having a boss. I kind of know why, but I think that's great. And look, there's a lot of listeners to this podcast who, have started their journey or looking to get into their journey.
What's sort of a piece of advice that you would give them in terms of finance and brokering with
Yeah.
respect to building a portfolio?
Yeah, great question because I work with so many different people, which is the joy. The best that are part of my job is a lot of people see the finance aspect and getting finance as a transaction. But actually, particularly investors, if they realize that and if they see this as a long term strategy and they structure their loans correctly right from the beginning, so they can preserve their borrowing power. They can also reduce the risk and allow them for or allow themselves for future purchases. That will be probably the advice that I would give them. And there are so many things to take in consideration. Whether you're going to go with interest only or principal and interest, whether you're going to have an offset, are you going to cross collateralize your loans? Because a lot of people focus on the cheapest rate, but it's not always the smartest for an investor. So those are the things that I like to sort of educate my clients. And given my experience at Swinburne Uni and teaching for a number of years, I'm really used to and love that part of, my job. Just as an example, I had a client who came to me after buying, one investment and the first investment property, but they've locked both their home and their investment loan into with the same lender, cross collateralized them. And when they wanted to buy their second property, the lender wouldn't release the equity. So their options were very restricted. It actually nearly cost them the deal. So what we had to do very quickly, we had to restructure everything, separate the securities, set up some offset accounts, and suddenly they had the opportunity and the flexibility to keep on growing. Just to explain what cross collateralization means, in case your listeners don't know, because that's one thing that I'm really conscious when I'm listening to podcasts. There's so many times if I, for example, listen to a podcast and I hear a word, because I'm interested in nutrition as well, but when people use jargon, it just doesn't mean anything. So just wanted to explain what cross collateralization means is that when the bank ties two or more properties together to secure one loan, it actually means, so basically the bank uses the equity in property A to help you buy property B. They in the same times link the property.
Yeah.
So
And they're not independent, they're secured against each other.
it can be quite detrimental and frustrating. I remember a year ago, I had an investor who been investing for a number of years and had accumulated 6 or 7 properties. Some of them were in his individual name, some of them were with his partner, but they were all cross collateralized. And it was an absolute nightmare. So we had to review, all of his portfolio. And when we separated all the loans and all the properties, now he's got an opportunity to, if he doesn't want to stay with that new lender that we refinance them with, he can just take one at somewhere else, extract more funds, go again. You have so much more flexibility to go. And also it's so much easier to refinance, to do the things because you've got more control. The bank doesn't hold the control in what you do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're not at the mercy of the bank, really. And first of all, it's hard enough saying the word cross collateralization, but probably a good, showcase of how difficult it is to once you've actually got into it. It may work in very, very minor cases, but yeah, it's certainly something to consider. But I think, yeah, going back to what you were saying about structure and everything like that, I completely concur. Property really is a game of finance at the end of the day. So many people are focused on the property and not the finance. And I always speak about that. It's so important to get the right advice. Don't rely on your bank, get good brokering advice and make sure you set yourself up to have a successful portfolio. So well said. And, I can safely say to all the listeners out there, I've actually been speaking with Jasmine about SMSFs, even my one. And also, we've got a client that we're working with at the moment. So one of my actually youngest clients, and yeah, really excited with that one. And I think, the passion that I can see with yourself, in terms of how you approach the advice, the questions, everything, you can tell that you're not just doing this as a clock in, clock out kind of thing, right? I think, or even that is just a business. Like at the end of the day, I can see the real passion there. And that's why I really gravitate, I think, to yourself as well. So I think, you're definitely on the right field and right path from the passion that you've shown and the passion, the way you've spoken today as well. I wish you all the best with the business, and no doubt we'll be, working together in the future as well, which is really exciting.
Awesome. Thank you, Iynka. It was really an absolute pleasure to join you today.
No problem. Thank you so much for being here. I hope everyone got a lot out of today. I'm sure you did. Please reach out to Jasmine if you've got any questions. We'll link her details in the show notes. And yeah, look, if anyone has other people that they know or yourself and wants to join us and talk about your journey, we'd love to have you guys on. Just DM me and we'll have a chat. But for now, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the chat, feel free to drop us a rating on Spotify or wherever you listen. It helps us reach more listeners to help them with their journey. Catch you in the next episode.